behaviour raised by fellow Tory MP Andrew Bridgen. Also this morning, it's emerged Downing Street received a report of inappropriate behaviour against Sir Michael Fallon on the day he resigned as Defence Secretary. Journalist Jane Merricks accused him of trying to kiss her when she was a junior reporter. She's spoken about it before, but talking to The Times as recently as Tuesday, she'd refused to name Sir Michael.
My experience was on the less serious end of the spectrum. It was 14 years ago, and that's why I haven't chosen to name him, because I think if I did, then that would become the story, not the fact that we need to change the system.
In other reports from Westminster, the Prime Minister's deputy, Damien Green, has strongly denied claims pornography was found on one of his Commons computers 9 years ago. The allegation in the Sunday Times comes from a former Met Police Assistant Commissioner. Mr Green has called the claims a political smear. Police have arrested a second teenager after an acid attack in East London on Thursday night, which has left a man at risk of losing his sight. The 16-year-old is being questioned on suspicion of grievous bodily harm. A man remains in a critical condition in hospital after the attack in Walthamstow. Saudi Arabia says it's intercepted a ballistic missile fired by rebels in Yemen. State media says it was brought down close to the capital Riyadh, around 600 miles north of the border with Yemen. Donald Trump is in Japan, where he's due to discuss North Korea's nuclear program with the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. He's beginning his first official tour of Asia. Speaking at an airbase in Tokyo, the president praised American and Japanese troops as the greatest threat to tyrants and dictators.
We will face all of them together as a team. And if we do, I am certain that the future for America, for Japan, and for our cherished allies has never, ever looked brighter.
And Gordon Brown says Britain was misled over Saddam Hussein's access to weapons of mass destruction. The former Prime Minister says the invasion was unjustified when he was Chancellor under Tony Blair in 2003. LBC weather, mostly dry and bright today, but feeling very chilly, a high of just 9 degrees. Tonight, some showers on the coast, but staying dry for most, temperatures dropping again overnight. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Thomas Watts.
Traffic jam ahead. Notifying client of delay.
Cars are getting smarter. But what about managing vehicles for your business? As a global leader for 50 years, LeasePlan knows what's next in smart fleet management. Our 360 formula improves the total cost of running your vehicles whilst looking at sustainability and employee satisfaction.
That's smart. What's next?
Check out our 360 formula at leaseplan.co.uk. LeasePlan. What's next?
LBC Travel in Pimlico, Grosvenor Road eastbound is closed because the police are investigating an accident that happened earlier on at Chelsea Bridge Road. Fulham High Street is closed southbound between Fulham Road and New Kings Road until 6 o'clock tonight because of roadworks. The M4 eastbound into London is looking heavy now from Junction 3 for Hayes to Junction 2 for Brentford. It's slow on the A24 southbound through Tooting and Merton. That's because of the London to Brighton veteran car run. In Gants Hill, the A12 Eastern Avenue is slow because of an accident at Aldborough Road. The traffic lights aren't working either. And on the Tube, there are severe delays on the District and Hammersmith and City lines between Barking and Upminster. That's because of signal failure. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show. As Westminster is gripped in what is undoubtedly the worst crisis to have hit British politics since the expenses scandal, and with every day that goes by, somebody new is suspended, has the whip withdrawn, whether it's from the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, indeed some problems north of the border in the Scottish Parliament too. And I'm just wondering, what is our confidence in Parliament like, our belief in our political system? And I say this 500 days on from the referendum, you know, when we voted for a fundamental change that doesn't appear to be happening. I've got a feeling that our trust in politicians, in the political system, in our ability to change things, is probably this morning about as low as it's ever been. Very interesting comment by Gary Streeter, Conservative MP. He's represented the Plymouth area since 1992. And he said on Twitter this week, it feels increasingly like the 1992 to 97 Parliament. No majority, no money, ripping ourselves apart over the European Union. That lasted 5 years. Oh dear. And I think there is a feeling, and you've got to be, obviously, getting on in years to remember the Back to Basics campaign that was launched by John Major that led to, a flurry of allegations of sexual impropriety, some ultimately that involved the Prime Minister, John Major, himself. But there is a problem. Our trust in politics is on the floor. Take the Veracity Index that is put out every year that tells us who do we trust in the world, and unsurprisingly we have great faith in the medical profession and teachers, etc. But who are the 5 least trusted professions in Britain today? Well, our big business leaders, only 33% of you trust them and think they tell the truth. Estate agents, well, they're there at 30%. Journalists are there at 24%. Government ministers, 20%. And politicians generally, 15%. 85% of you listening to this programme do not trust politicians, and I would argue probably, by extension, politics at all. We have a major, major problem. I want to debate that, but first, let's get back to the Westminster sex scandal. I'm going to go to Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. Theo, they appear to be dropping like flies.
Damien Green, Nigel, is back in the headlines this morning. Of course, he faced allegations, which he strenuously denied during the week, from the writer and his family friend, Kate Maltby, that he fleetingly touched her knee in a taxi and then sent her a suggestive text message. Now, Damien Green is back in the headlines today after allegations that extreme pornography was found on his computer. Now, this allegation dates back to 2008, when the police were investigating a government leak in Parliament. They seized Mr. Green's computers. There was a big furore around it at the time because they didn't inform the Speaker and the House authorities that they were going to do this. And now the allegation is coming from a former Assistant Met Commissioner called Bob Quick. And Mr. Green, for his part, has said that Mr. Quick is running a sort of smear campaign, political smear campaign against him. But one of the key parts of this, Nigel, is that Mr. Quick is going to be giving evidence to a lady called Sue Gray tomorrow, and she's running the Cabinet Office inquiry. She's a Whitehall ethics supremo, and she's going to be taking evidence from Mr. Quick. Now, off the record, speaking to people around Damien Green, and this relates to the Kate Maltby allegations, they insist that there is they have strong evidence which actually, in part, they would claim completely undoes the allegation by Miss Maltby. But this is the key allegation, if you like, Nigel, because she is the de facto Deputy Prime Minister. This
meeting, this investigation that Sue Gray, senior civil servant, is holding, is a private, not a public event, yeah?
Yeah, it's a private event, absolutely.
So what is a former Metropolitan Police officer who was involved in, a very, very important inquiry into government leaks, what is he doing talking to the newspapers about it?
Well, that would have to be a question for Mr. Quick, but it is something that you raise because also, it's quite right to raise it because also Kate Maltby, who did an interview in the Sunday Times today, will also be speaking to Sue Gray ahead of that investigation when it starts tomorrow. The only other minister that's in subject to that, by the way, at the moment, is Mark Garnier. He's the trade minister, and of course he was the first one, if you like, to face these to be named in these allegations. Incidentally, Daniel Poulter, former health minister, he's been reported to the Disciplinary Procedure Committee, which is a new committee set up as a result of these allegations by Andrew Bridgen, one of his own side, amid allegations that Mr. Bridgen reported to the whips that Daniel Poulter had behaved inappropriately. And then another embarrassing story for the government, Chris Pincher. He's a senior government whip. He is facing allegations, Nigel, that he invited back a former Tory aide, former Olympic rower called Alex Story to his house and behaved like a pound shop Harvey Weinstein in his bathrobe and made suggestive comments.
Yeah, I mean, Theo, clearly there's a mixture of things here. But on the one hand, you've got allegations of people really behaving badly, grabbing, groping, abusing their positions. And on the other, we seem to have allegations that someone's hand might have brushed across someone's knee in a bar. Aren't we in danger here of some of the more trivial incidents actually masking what overall could be some very serious abuse that's going on?
Well, you're quite right to say that, Nigel. On that list of 40 MPs that was circulating last week, there was everything from perfectly consensual affairs. Now, of course, most of us would agree that, that's an immoral thing to do, is to have an affair behind your wife or husband's back. But it's not illegal. That's the key part, and yet that's mixed in, as you say, with perhaps some comments that could have been taken out of hand, and then mixed in with some really serious stuff. And it's become very difficult to pick out what's what and what falls into which bracket. And people have been caught up. Rory Stewart, for instance, faced allegations that he behaved inappropriately towards a female researcher. That female researcher actually went on the record and said completely untrue. When she worked for Rory Stewart, he behaved in a professional manner throughout, and that she found the allegations deeply disturbing. So actually what is also mixed into this story are complete falsehoods, things that are libelous, that are wrong, but it's very difficult to see, for the general public to see what is actually what's what, and then of course that just undermines public trust all the more.
For the public to see through that. Also tough for the public because actually nearly all of the names that you've mentioned this morning, the general public have never ever heard of them. They've literally never heard of them. And given that in the modern world, increasingly people meet their partners through the workplace, either directly or indirectly, I'm not quite sure what some of these messages are. I'm worried, Theo, that we're going to concern ourselves with people making passes at each other rather than serious sexual assault. And I'm not quite sure where this ends. Is your guess that as the weeks go by, more and more names come out?
I think the most important thing to look at from a political point of view is who survives. Does Damien Green survive? Because if Damien Green goes, that is the Prime Minister's closest friend, confidant within the Cabinet. They went to university together. He's a de facto Deputy Prime Minister, key position. He is under increasing pressure now, irrespective of whether the allegations are right or are correct or incorrect. And that's where, in Westminster, politically speaking, we'll be looking to see whether Mr. Green can hold on. Because if Mr. Green goes, this government is in jeopardy.
Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, thank you for that update on where we are. Well, Theo making the point that if the Deputy PM goes, the government perhaps is in real trouble. But it isn't just sex allegations, is it? We had the expenses scandal where I think members of the public thought that MPs were putting in claims for all sorts of frivolous things that, frankly, the public should not be picking up the purse for. But it's also, I have to say, and I'm going to say this as a leaver, 500 days after that vote, we're still in the European Union, we're still paying money, there's no great prospect at the moment for us actually leaving, given the government wants a transition period. There are millions of Labour voters who voted leave, who thought in the manifesto a few months ago that Corbyn still supported that. He's now decided to turn the party's view around. I think there is a problem. I mean, how do we change things? How do we change things with our current political system? I think it needs a complete overhaul. I think we need to have recall, where we have the ability to call a member of Parliament that's sitting to a by-election because we're unhappy with their behaviour. I think we need a different electoral system whereby the big parties don't dominate and we don't finish up with MPs from both parties who are really very similar to each other. I think we need an element of proportional representation, and we need, as the Americans do, open primaries so the people can pick candidates, not the central parties in Westminster, who frankly have too much power over all of this system. They're my thoughts for what needs changing. But tell me, what's the one reform that you think should be made to our political system? Call me on 0345 6060 973. Text me at 84850. You can tweet on @LBC using the hashtag Farage at LBC. And of course, if you're watching on Facebook, you can also comment there too. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 10:15.
Well, you are pernickety.
What is the first
I just want to say a couple of things.
My problem with it is the following.
LBC at the weekend. Alex Salmond.
I think the European Union are undoing this, not because they haven't recognised Catalonia, is their unwillingness to condemn outright the violence that we saw from the Spanish state police on the 1st of October on the people of Catalonia, who were merely trying to exercise a right to vote.
Leading Britain's conversation. Alex Salmond. Today from 3 on LBC.
Can you think of a reason why you shouldn't apply for an Ocean credit card? There's a credit limit of up to £1,500. They send you texts so you keep control of your spending, and you can see if you'll be accepted before you apply at checkocean.co.uk. Plus, checking won't affect your credit rating. But before you go and check, there's just one reason why you shouldn't. Because you've already got an Ocean credit card, right? Otherwise, get checking. Go to checkocean.co.uk. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One is the exclusive lender.
Your son's the lead ghost in the school play. You're so proud of him. And there isn't a single crease on that sheet he's wearing. And in this special moment, all you can think is, did I leave the iron on? You check using the Hive app. Phew, it's off. Now back to your crease-free ghost.
Join over 500,000 people using the Hive app, smart plugs and the rest of our product range to control their home from their phone. Search Hive to discover more. Hive, let's get living. Hive services require broadband, terms apply.
Banning stuff. Seems every week someone wants to do it. But I reckon you're old enough to know what's good for you. So I just want you to have a think about what you drink at home through the week. The one because you're cooking with wine. The couple in front of the telly, the extra one to finish off the evening. Cutting out just a few of those drinks could help improve your mood. And would you really miss him? But you know what? It's your call. Have a little less, feel a lot better. See how at drinkaware.co.uk.
Eating some crisps, watching Sky One. Crisps are proper telly food. No plates, no cutlery, no table. They even come in their own tidy little bag. Just lick your fingers before touching the remote. Love my crisps. Almost as much as I love telly. Crispy one? Sky One.
The DVLA can spot an untaxed car a mile off. So, whether you're from Sutton-on-Sea and drive an SUV, or East Ham and own a white van, the fact is we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/taxitnow.
You know your 70s from your 80s, from your 90s, from your noughties.
Let's go.
But do you know your pension options? PensionWise is a service set up by the government to provide free, impartial guidance about your pension pot. If you're over 50, call 0800 138 1888 to book your free telephone or face-to-face appointment. PensionWise. Get to know your options.
We've been thinking about dad dancing. How you and he enjoy it in equal measure. He gets to demonstrate his signature moves. You get an evening of free comedy watching him. It works both ways. And then we thought, shouldn't we have the same relationship with our customers, rewarding them for banking with us? And we thought, yes, we should. So we did. That's why with the NatWest Reward current account, we give you 2% back in rewards on household bills. Search NatWest Rewards. NatWest, we are what we do.
£2 monthly fee. Earn rewards on eligible bills paid by direct debit when paying in £1,500 per month. UK only. Eligibility criteria apply.
The Nigel Farage Show. Text 84850.
Our confidence in politics and politicians is at rock bottom, and it isn't just this sex scandal that's breaking. It isn't just the expensive scandal that we had a few years ago. I believe it's our powerlessness to do anything, to change anything. Let me give you an example, a specific example of why I think people are feeling pretty hacked off with politics and politicians. Let's take the constituency of Huddersfield in the borough of Kirklees, up there in Yorkshire. Barry Shearman is the Labour MP. He's been their MP since 1979. He's got a very, very safe seat. And you may well have been a loyal Barry Shearman voter throughout many of those years. Last week, he caused a bit of a storm. He talked about the low educational attainment of Brexit supporters. Basically, if you voted Brexit, you're pretty stupid. And he cited the university towns who all voted Remain. You remember the ones I talked about last week that receive hundreds of millions of pounds directly from the European Union. But Barry Shearman said that as a representative of a constituency where 55% of people voted in that referendum to leave the European Union. 1 week on, far from being repentant in any way about what he said about the majority of his own constituents and voters. No, a week on, he said, unfortunately, many of the protests I've received from Brexit supporters are so illiterate that it's impossible to read them and know what they are trying to say. Now, you know, if I'm a Leave voter living in Huddersfield, and particularly if I'm a Labour Leave voter living in Huddersfield, that is going to make my blood boil. I've just been insulted by the town's MP. And yet, what can I do to change it? Nothing. Nothing. I'm not going to get the Labour Party to deselect someone that's been there since 1979. I've got no power at all. And this, to me, is a classic example of where a different political system might help us. If we had the right of recall, if 20% of us in a constituency signed an attested petition demanding a by-election, we should be able to have one. Many parts of the USA have this system. Time and again in David Cameron's years, he talked about the prospect of bringing this in and never did anything about it. I'm going to put on the table, you know, as my first big pitch this morning as to how we might restore faith in politics and make us as voters feel that actually we're in charge, because we should be, folks, shouldn't we? They're supposed to work for us, not the other way round. We should have the right of recall, and certainly if I was living in Huddersfield as a Labour Leave voter, I'd be signing that petition this morning. And by the way, Barry Shearman, if you're listening, do call 0345 6060 973 and tell me I've got it wrong. Tell me your own voters have got it wrong. I'm going to go to Stuart in Kensington for my first big suggestion of the morning. Stuart, hello.
Hello, Nigel. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
For me, this is a grave concern, and I see the problem at the centre of the hub is that it lacks integrity. And without integrity, nothing works. It simply spreads down the spokes and pollutes the consciousness of the whole. Now, these people, if we look at the bottom line, are trustees of an estate in office.
Yep.
We are the electorate, the grantors of that said trust.
We should be the bosses, Stuart, yeah?
Yeah. For and on our behalf as beneficiaries. Now, it's a fundamental fact that if a trustee is in breach of duty of office, he must resign office.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they go into office and they swear an oath, and then they think they assume the audacity that they can override the oath of office. And you've only got to look at, for example, the Act of Succession that states you cannot bind your successors, thereby technically invalidating Maastricht and the Lisbon Treaty.
Yeah, I mean, Stuart, this was the Tony Benn argument, wasn't it? Tony Benn made this argument for decades. He said that actually the European Communities Act 1972 went against the British Constitution because no parliament can be bound by a previous one. I understand that, but we have now voted to leave, Stuart, so we should, if that will gets carried out, we should be back to a sovereign parliament, shouldn't we?
Well, hopefully, yes, rather than being run by an executive. The way I see it, what's going on, in fact, if you see the undercurrent on a metaphysical level, what we've got going on is El Mundi, the underworld in the shape of corporate fiction, attempting to control the living souls. And of course, there is an agenda to take global control of the financial markets, and of course, this puts the spoke in it.
So what can the voter do, Stuart? What can we as voters do? Because we're feeling helpless, aren't we?
Okay, well, given we're moving into this world of equality, and they all speak of equality, now, is that on proportional representation or is it not?
Well,
if it is, then there's a possibility that we could set up a parliament whereby we have 50% females, 50% males, a male runs the females and a female runs the males.
Well, that would be quotas, Stuart, as opposed to PR. But look, you've given us a couple of ideas there to talk about, and one or two others agree. I get on Twitter, proportional representation and make everyone vote is one suggestion. Peggy is calling from Basildon. Peggy, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. I'd love to see the House of Lords done away with.
Peggy, come on. Well, you're being really mean. Don't you realise that House of Lords car park and dining room every day is packed full of David Cameron and Tony Blair's chums? Do you want to spoil their lifestyle?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. The oldest expensive care home in the country. We must be the laughing stock of the world if anyone looks at it.
Do you know, the other day, Peggy, I was on Eurostar coming back from Brussels, and there was a member of the House of Lords, and I won't name him, it's not fair, but there was a member of the House of Lords on the train. And I asked him, I said, well, how's it going? Because he's been in the Lords a couple of years. He said, it's the best old people's home in London. It's exactly what he said to me. He said, we get a subsidised lunch and drinks aren't expensive, and they get paid a few £100 for turning up every day, don't they?
Absolutely. And they have the cheek to make laws where they earn more in one day with expenses. You know, they don't pay no tax on the expenses, and what they make laws for people don't even earn that in a week, which is outrageous.
Peggy, we need an upper house to review legislation. I've always thought that. And the idea that you have an upper house of more experienced people from a wide range of backgrounds in life, and hopefully from a wide geography across the United Kingdom, is something I've always supported. I'm now struck, Peggy, that Blair and Cameron's announcements have just filled the House of Lords up with Londoners, all of whom have pretty much the same point of view. I don't think the rest of the country is now represented in the House of Lords. Ironically, it was better represented with the hereditaries because they came from right across the country. So, Peggy, I think getting rid of the House of Lords, I think now the public's ready for it. I think it's been discredited. What would you put in its place, Peggy?
Well, I would have, first of all, I would make a constitution and have people that were elected from the general public, and I'd make them sign this constitution that they put the country first, not their parties, because this is where we keep going wrong. They put their parties before this country. And I have Brexit. Will we ever come out of Brexit? It's a joke, because half of them in Parliament are Remainers.
No, Peggy. No, you've got that wrong. I'm sorry, Peggy in Basildon, but you really have got that fundamentally wrong. Half of them in Parliament aren't Remainers. Over 70% of them are Remainers. And in the House of Lords, I think it's probably over 80%. So, we do have a system that is very out of touch with us. Peggy, I thank you. One of the ideas about reinvigorating politics has been to reduce the voting age to 16. And this was being discussed in Westminster on Friday. Is that a way, perhaps, of engaging more people? Ben on Facebook takes a very different view. He says 30 years old minimum age of voting, adults only. Ben, I don't think you're onto a winner with that. I've personally never been convinced of the idea that we should reduce the voting age to 16. I don't think you should be able to vote in an election unless you're able to be a candidate in that election. I think that makes sense all round. And do we actually think that 16-year-olds should be able to become members of Parliament? I personally don't. So I don't support that change. Ruth is calling from Northallerton. Ruth, give me one big idea to restore faith in politics.
Well, it's a bit of a tall order, isn't it?
It is.
Lovely to talk to you, Nigel.
Good morning.
I've been a fan of yours for years. And what I think we need to tighten up on the qualifications for being on the electoral roll, because you've got these rotten boroughs like Tower Hamlets and places where people come from the far corners of the globe and suddenly they're entitled to vote here, even if they can't speak the language and they don't know what they're voting for. And also, I do think we should have some sort of proportional representation, because like where I live in Northallerton, if you were to be a Labour or a UKIP supporter, you're not going to ever get an MP into Parliament to represent you. And the same if you're a Conservative voter in Barry Shearman's constituency. I think, you could tie a red ribbon round Huddersfield, Halifax, wherever Barry Shear comes from, and they'd vote for it.
So some form of PR.
The old bicycle with a blue ribbon on it, and they'll all vote for it. So.
Ruth, I absolutely agree with you. I think you're right. And in a moment, I'm going to explain the voting system that I think would be the best and the fairest, would keep the link between the member and the constituency, but give all of us, regardless of where we live, the chance to vote on something where we felt it would not be wasted. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 10:30 and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
Theresa May's most senior minister has strongly denied claims pornography was found on one of his Commons computers 9 years ago, calling it a political smear. The Home Secretary says the allegations will be looked into. Separately, Downing Street has confirmed Conservative MP Dan Poulter has been referred to his party's new disciplinary committee for an investigation. A second teenager has been arrested over an acid attack in East London, which has left a man in a critical condition. He's being questioned on suspicion of grievous bodily harm after the attack in Walthamstow on Thursday. And President Trump has warned that no dictator and no regime should underestimate the United States. He's begun a tour of Asia and Japan, where the response to North Korea is expected to dominate discussion. LBC weather, mostly dry and bright today, but feeling chilly and crisp, a high of 9 degrees.
LBC travel in Pimlico, Grosvenor Road eastbound is closed because the police are investigating an accident that happened earlier this morning at Chelsea Bridge Road. Fulham High Street is closed southbound between Fulham Road and New Kings Road until 6 o'clock this evening because of roadworks. The M4 going eastbound into London is looking heavy now from Junction 3 for Hayes to Junction 2 for Brentford. In Gants Hill, the A12 Eastern Avenue is slow because of an accident at Aldborough Road. The traffic lights aren't working there either. And on the rails, Virgin Trains West Coast services are at a stand between Milton Keynes Central and Watford Junction. That's because of a signalling problem. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
Can you think of a reason why you shouldn't apply for an Ocean credit card? There's a credit limit of up to £1,500. They send you texts so you keep control of your spending, and you can see if you'll be accepted before you apply at checkocean.co.uk. Plus, checking won't affect your credit rating. But before you go and check, there's just one reason why you shouldn't. Because you've already got an Ocean credit card, right? Otherwise, get checking. Go to checkocean.co.uk. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One is the exclusive lender.
Calling all units. Reports coming in of Sky's gripping new cop drama Tin Star, epic Game of Thrones and loads more shows, all with Sky TV from £20 a month. Sky TV and Sky Q, the Next Generation box, have been sighted in the vicinity. Witnesses report watching wirelessly all round the home for just £12 extra a month. Units should respond immediately and search Sky Q to join or recontract. Sky. Believe in better.
£20 standard setup, new 18-month TV contract requires Sky Q multi-screen. Sky Q kit loaned at no cost. Upfront payment required. Terms apply.
Nothing. Naught. Nil. Or in Swedish, ingenting. There are many ways of saying zero. We think you'll particularly like our version, because with nothing comes nothing to worry about. And that's what 0% APR finance does when you buy a Volvo Select approved used car. 0% APR finance, 0% worry. And for even less hassle, we're offering 2-year servicing for just $199. Visit the Volvo Select used car event at your nearest Volvo dealership from the 3rd to the 6th of November and enjoy having zero to worry about. Visit volvocars.co.uk for more details.
Offer available on used vehicles bought from the 3rd to the 6th of November at participating dealers. Finance subject to status. 50% minimum deposit. Minimum £6,000 to finance. 18s or over. T's and C's apply. Guarantees may be required. Volvo Car Credit.
If you haven't taxed your car, here's something to think about. At the DVLA, we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. Currently, we are clamping or impounding over 10,000 untaxed vehicles every month. It's nothing personal. It's the law. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/car tax.
Your son's the lead ghost in the school play. You're so proud of him. And there isn't a single crease on that sheet he's wearing. And in this special moment, all you can think is, did I leave the iron on? You check using the Hive app. Phew, it's off. Now back to your crease-free ghost.
Join over 500,000 people using the Hive app, smart plugs and the rest of our product range to control their home from their phone. Search Hive to discover more. Hive. Let's get living. Hive services require broadband. Terms apply.
Even if you only employ one person, you have to provide a workplace pension. It's the law. Get to know your responsibilities with help from the pensions regulator. Visit workplacepensions.gov.uk.
We've been thinking about dad dancing. How you and he enjoy it in equal measure. He gets to demonstrate his signature moves. You get an evening of free comedy watching him. It works both ways. And then we thought, shouldn't we have the same relationship with our customers, rewarding them for banking with us? And we thought, yes, we should. So we did. That's why with the NatWest Reward current account, we give you 2% back in rewards on household bills. Search NatWest Rewards. NatWest, we are what we do.
£2 monthly fee. Earn rewards on eligible bills paid by direct debit when paying in £1,500 per month. UK only. Eligibility criteria apply.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
We've had enough of politics and politicians. The whole thing's at rock bottom, and Bill on Facebook sort of agrees with me. He says, yes, you're right. It's at rock bottom, and it's all your blooming fault. If you'd kept your mouth shut, we'd be fine. No Brexit, and we'd be working with the EU to change for the better. Really, Bill? Well, I'll tell you what, Bill, we've been trying to change the EU for 40 years and failing to do so. One of the reasons people voted Brexit. But actually, if you really want to become disenchanted with politics, look at the Greeks. Don't matter who they vote for as part of the euro, doesn't matter whether their government's on the left or on the right, everything from their tax rates to what they can spend on the hospitals is decided by the European Union, the IMF and other institutions. And really, Bill, the point of Brexit, the ultimate point of Brexit, is that we will in the future be voting for people directly in charge of making our laws. And in the last few years, the majority of our laws have not been made by people we vote for in Westminster. They've come from the EU. So we're trying, we want, all of us on the Brexit side, want democracy to be reinvigorated. The real question I'm asking this morning is whether, given our current system, given the voting system, given the fact we haven't got recall, given the fact the House of Lords still has as much power as it has, given the abuses within the postal voting system, given the structure we've got, whether we can actually get to the vibrant democracy that we need, where voters feel properly in control. Andy says voting reform is definitely needed. At the last election, we had a whole new industry of tactical voting. Well, Andy, it wasn't just tactical voting. A lot of it's negative voting. Oh, I'm going to vote for this big party because I hate the other big party even more. Millions of people are voting on that basis under our first-past-the-post system rather than voting for what they believe in. Now, I've always been told first-past-the-post is the right system because it guarantees majority government and not coalitions. Well, didn't work out that way in 2010, did it? And it didn't work out that way in 2017. So we're living effectively with coalition government or confidence and supply government anyway. The voting system, Ruth, who was speaking to me before the break, the voting system that I think would work best is called AV+. It was the one that the late Lord Jenkins, Roy Jenkins, came up with when Blair tasked him to look at the electoral system, to make it more relevant to people. AV Plus means you would get, when you go into the polling station, 2 ballot papers, okay? One, you'd vote for the man or woman to represent your town or part of the city in which you live. And with the second ballot paper, you'd vote for a party or an opinion that you liked the most. All right? Now, you may well vote... you may well vote Labour on one and Green on the other. Or you may well vote Conservative on one and UKIP on the other. Or UKIP on one and Labour on the other. Or whatever permutation you wish. But the point is, let's say you're a high Tory living in Barry Shearman's Huddersfield constituency. You know the Tories have got no chance of winning that seat, and you might think, do you know what, it's Thursday, it's 7 o'clock, I've had a tough day at work, it's raining, I simply can't be bothered to walk down to the local primary school knowing my vote counts for nothing. With AV+, your second vote would go onto a national tally for the Tories, and about 20% of seats in Parliament would be divvied up on that basis. We're already using a variance of that for the London Assembly, the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Assembly. There's absolutely no reason at all why we can't extend that to general elections. I think we put the turnout up massively by doing so. So, Ruth, that's the system that I was referring to. That, I think, would be a huge step in the right direction. Charles from Birmingham is ringing to give me the answer. Charles, good morning. Charles, hello? No, we haven't got Charles, but we have Michael from Muswell Hill on the line. Michael, good morning.
Oh, hi, Nigel. I'm not sure I have the answer, but possibly some suggestions. It seems to me that Parliament is dominated by men, and clearly that has led to the sort of atmosphere of machismo. I mean, our second house is called the House of Lords.
Yep.
I mean, the ladies don't even get a mention. So I think it's this atmosphere of machismo and the fact that there's so many sex scandals that have brought the Houses of Parliament into disrepute. Rather similar to your friend in America, how he has been dogged by sex scandals. In fact, he's admitted sexually assaulting women, and yet you, Nigel, you continue to support this man who 12 women have accused.
Well, I tell you what, Michael. If you want to talk about Donald Trump and you want to talk about Bill Clinton and all of that, we can do so. And we will be talking about Donald Trump from 11 until 12, because it's nearly exactly a year since that election on November the 8th last year. So that's not relevant to this. But are you saying to me, Michael, that if the percentage of women in Parliament increased further and the House of Lords was modernised, that would make Parliament a better place and we'd feel more in control of it?
Well, I think generally society is made up of 50% men and women. And I think the complete imbalance has left to this huge, huge sense of machismo, completely unrepresented, just like your friend, the American president. And we have to do something about it. We have to do something where it's okay to abuse women and become the leader of the free world.
No. Michael,
like
I'm sorry. You've obviously got your hobby horse, and that's good for you, but it's not what we're discussing. Goodbye. Keith is calling from Stoke Newington. Keith, good morning.
Morning, Nigel. Look, Nigel, mustn't lose sight of the fundamental principles of our parliamentary system.
Yep.
For example, the House of Lords is the only institution in the world where a free man can participate in politics freely without having to follow a party line. And a party line can be classed as a dictatorship. And on that point, we've also got to remember that post-Oliver Cromwell, when he got rid of the monarchy by getting rid of Charles I, acted as Lord Protector and handed power to the MPs who came so corrupt. He then had to go and arrest them, throw him in Tower. He became Lord Protector. When he died, Parliament or the people realised they needed a check to stop corrupt MPs. So they reinstated the monarchy with the sole jurisdiction to protect the people. So it's the monarch's responsibility to enforce these checks, and that's what we've still got to maintain, this freedom of the people to control, which is a point you're making.
Yeah.
But sorry?
No. I understand that, but Keith, the point about the House of Lords is, you talk about the independence of the people in the House of Lords. Every single person in Cameron's resignation honours, every single one of them backed the Remain campaign. There was nobody went there from the Leave campaign. And that's the kind of House of Lords that has been built up during the Blair and Cameron years. It is a representation of the metropolitan elite, and I think, frankly, the people of this country have lost all faith in it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that point. And Blair, in socialism, basically works on a dictatorship, and that was totally wrong for them to do that. And and that's manipulation of where the Queen or the governing power, which is the Queen, should stop it. She's there to protect this manipulation, as you've just described, of MPs or
none of us know, Keith. None of us know what private conversations the Queen may or may not have had with these prime ministers over the course of the last few years. I understood why they wanted to abolish the hereditary peers, and we're left with 92 because it appeared to be totally out of date. But I think what we've replaced it with is far worse than it was when the majority of them were hereditaries. That's my feeling, Keith. I thank you, Keith, for your call. I think an elected Senate is the only possible way to go. My own suggestion would be that they can serve a 15-year term and one term only. That's my suggestion for how we do the upper house. Maybe Khalid in Edmonton has a view on that. Good morning.
Morning, Nigel. I think we just need to get rid of career politicians. We need to get more experience in the House of Commons, so we need to get people from a wider variety of backgrounds, not just from Oxford, not just from the traditional universities. We need to get more ex-doctors, people from the city, people from social work, people who can genuinely input into policy. And I think the way you do that, and this is going to be controversial, but the way you do that is to increase MP salaries massively. I'm sorry, but 75,000, is that how much?
Yeah, well, yeah, but Khalid,
75,000 is not going to get anywhere. As no one worth his salt who's got any experience in the private sector is going to take a job for 75,000.
I do understand that argument, Khalid. I do understand. It's often said that young professionals in their 30s who are very good in their fields won't go into politics because they'd be taking a big pay cut. But even if you up the salaries, if the two big parties are still in charge, effectively, of who your candidate is, constituency by constituency, then you will get no change on the current group of politicians we've got. I made a comment earlier about all these allegations, these sexual allegations. Most of these people being accused, the general public have never even heard of them. And I think, Khalid, if you went to AV+, the system I talked about a few minutes ago, other political parties would start to win more seats in Parliament, and then you would see a bigger range of backgrounds.
But don't you think people who we want to represent us would just be put off because they just wouldn't be able to support their family? I mean, I can see your point. You know, there is definitely a point there in terms of political parties being able to choose candidates. There's definitely an argument there. But ultimately, this is about economics.
Right. Well, do you know what, Khalid? Khalid, if Brexit goes through properly, and if our Parliament is genuinely sovereign and in charge and responsible and directly accountable under a system where we can sack MPs that are wrong-uns, we've got more choice at election time, then I wouldn't mind them being paid more. But not until that moment, is my view. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 10:46.
This is LBC.
The DVLA can spot an untaxed car a mile off. So, whether you're from Sutton-on-Sea and drive an SUV, or East Ham and own a white van, the fact is we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/taxitnow.
You know your 70s from your 80s, from your 90s, from your noughties.
Let's go.
But do you know your pension options? PensionWise is a service set up by the government to provide free, impartial guidance about your pension pot. If you're over 50, call 0800 138 1888 to book your free telephone or face-to-face appointment. PensionWise. Get to know your options.
I like my telly how I like my coffee. Strong, fast, and packing a punch. A bit like Sky One. Because when it comes to telly, I need it instantly. Super fast, straight to the brain. Just like that. Drink one, Sky One.
This week, the Sunday Times is serving up something really special. Chef Marcus Waring shares his favourite home-cooked recipes. Candice Brown bakes a treat for bonfire night, and find out which new little star of a restaurant A.A. Gill's successor Marina O'Loughlin discovered in Leeds. Pick up your copy of the Sunday Times this weekend.
Come and experience Lebanese dining at Marouche Restaurants. Try some of our amazing dishes, kafta dipped in a delicious hummus, or a colourful meze, complemented by a robust Lebanese red. With live music and traditional belly dancing, enjoy an atmosphere to match the food's rich and distinctive flavours. Go to Marouche.com to find out more. Marouche Restaurants, the finest Lebanese food across London.
If you own a Swiss watch and it's time to sell it, speak to watches.co.uk. The whole process runs like clockwork. Rolex, Patek Philippe, Omega and more. It only takes a couple of ticks and we pay immediately. Or if you just fancy a change, we could take yours in part exchange. From time on your hands to money in your pocket, it couldn't be easier with watches.co.uk. The pre-owned Swiss watch specialist.
I am proper on one now, getting ready to watch Sky One because Strikeback's incoming! New team, new mission, a high-risk manhunt, I'm told, somewhere across Europe and the Middle East. And there I was thinking my job was stressful. On one, Sky One. Strike Back. Tuesdays, 9 p.m.
You've worked hard your whole life, building up your business and your personal wealth, only for the tax man to take a big chunk after you're gone. Protect your family and loved ones by talking to one of the estate planning specialists at Barnes Rofe. We'll look at your situation and help you to plan ahead and manage your estate for inheritance tax. Don't delay. Visit barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe. Clever accountants for business.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag FarageOnLBC.
I want to bring some faith back into our political system, and I want voters to feel that they're in charge again. I think we need really serious reform, and I'm asking you for your suggestions. Chrissy says to me on Twitter, greed should be kicked out. No more spin, limit expenses, and no free bars at work. There are no free bars, Chrissy. They do actually have to buy their drinks in the House of Commons and the Lords. They may not be the most expensive prices, but they do, and it is subsidised, but they do have to buy them. And I think the point is, maybe that the argument, and we've seen a bit of it today, is that if there's less alcohol knocking around Westminster, there may be fewer sexual indiscretions that take place. That is an argument that is being heard out there today. John from Somerset says, I'd make every voter take their passport and driver's licence to vote. Well, that would certainly stop the vote early, vote often phenomenon. I thought it was disgraceful after the election. The number of people on websites, students saying they were students, boasting they'd voted twice in the general election. Yep, that's something that needs to be looked at. Your suggestions for reform are great, but how do we get them to happen? Because the government will never want them. Well, the government, Elaine, never wanted an EU referendum, but they were forced into that. If enough people want change and are prepared to stand up and say it, you can get it. Corbyn would love the 16-year-olds to vote. He is their cult leader. 21 years of age would be my preferred choice, says David. But Stephen on Facebook disagrees wildly with that and says that they should be able to vote because they're able to fight for their country at that age. Well, they're not. You've got to be 18 to fight for the country. Positive suggestion here. Banning Farage from politics. That'd really help, wouldn't it? I mean, that's a great Twitter suggestion. That would really help hugely. Actually, I tell you what, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, one thing I did manage to do was to bring people into the voting system who hadn't voted, in some cases, ever in their lives. I'd like to see a lot more people voting. Dawn says bring in PR and compulsory voting. I don't support compulsory voting. I think it's your choice whether you go out and exercise that vote or not. That is part of your freedom, part of your liberty to make that decision. But it's a healthier country if more people engage in the process and vote. The AV Plus voting system, I'm convinced, would do that. Louise is calling me from Islington. Louise, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Nigel. I am such an admirer of your voice. I love listening to you.
Well, that's very kind of you, Louise. Thank you.
I like the way you sell things as well. Unfortunately, I've got a couple of things that I would like to discuss with you. And one of it, you said that the Parliament or the politicians are not responsible enough. Now, where do they get their information from? Their unfiltered information, or is it all filtered information upon which they act?
No, they make their own minds up, Louise. I mean, you know, they get briefs that are given to them by researchers and from political parties, and there's a whip that is given to them every week telling them what's coming up to vote and how they should vote. So a lot of things are given to them, but hey, they're all grown-ups and they're free to source information from wherever they want.
Yes, I know, but there is a serious lack of information, and it is actually quite biased. And I just feel that if it were more balanced, that would help.
Well, Louise, I would say, just in final answer to that one point, that is determined by the quality of people that we have in Parliament. If you have quality people in Parliament, they will have inquiring minds. They will source their own forms of what they see as the truth. Sorry, Louise, your second point.
I'm 100% with you on that, 100%. The second thing I just wanted to ask you, you have this voting system that you're suggesting with two separate pieces of paper. What happens if one polling station doesn't supply one set of papers, and then they only can vote one thing?
No, because that will be the instruction. Is that every there will be two sets of ballot papers for every election. There'll be two boxes, with clearly marked ballot papers, one to go in the black box and one to go in the white box or the blue box or the green box or whatever it is. So no, I'm not worried about that, Louise, at all. And as I say, we are effectively using a variant of that system already for the London Assembly, for the Welsh Assembly and for the Scottish Parliament. So already that principle that you have a first-past-the-post representative and a top-up list, it's already pretty well established throughout the UK. I know the Conservative Party have never ever wanted this. The Labour Party don't want it. But I do think, frankly, for millions of people, if you're a Tory living in a safe Labour area, or a socialist, a Corbynite living in, I don't know, somewhere in West Sussex, the incentives to go and vote simply aren't great, Louise.
But you see, I quite agree with you. The only thing is, I heard at some stage, I'm not sure it was in England, but they were running out of paper to vote. So that if that doesn't happen like that, then that's fine. Can I just have one other question?
Go on then, very quickly.
Yeah, you are the only person that actually said anything about the referendum. That actually really the rest of the politicians or anybody was useless. People were just not informed. There was nothing that they really that any of the major points was made to people. It was done like Trump, who just went to the individual groups and said, you can have more fish. You don't have to pay so much for that. You can have the coal now. You can do this. Only those bits were pointed out, and it did not give any. I know it is such a big subject. To leave it to the poor individual to make a decision on such a big thing is enormous.
Well, you know, Louise, all I will say to you is that exercise in direct democracy via the referendum produced a result that shocked the establishment and proved they were wrong in terms of their thinking. Just for that, it was worthwhile. My last caller on the subject is going to be Jordan, who's calling from Manchester. Jordan, good morning.
Hello, Nigel.
So, what needs to happen?
I kind of agree with you on this. I think there needs to be serious reforms. I think there's some, though, I think you probably wouldn't agree with, though. So I do want proportional representation, and ideally I do like single transferable vote, but I do understand it can kind of cut the link between the constituency and an MP. So
yeah, I mean, obviously Northern Ireland is using a fair bit of that, but yeah. I mean, the reason I suggested AV Plus was I think you do keep that link, and that's considered to be an important point by electors, Jordan.
Yeah, well, I think as a compromise, because we mentioned about the House of Lords as well.
Yeah,
it could be, you know, other forms of government do have upper houses and editing houses, so perhaps first past the post or AV Plus is there. However, a true proportional representation for an upper house or an editing house rather than the House of Lords, so that could be truly proportional to the amount of votes that a party has got. I do want the lowering age down. I mean, you made quite a decent point in regards to they couldn't become an MP themselves. Mm-hmm. However, obviously, 16 and 17-year-olds couldn't vote for an MP, but they could marry that MP and also have sex with that MP. Equally, Cat Smith, Labour MP, did make a really valid point, actually, in the fact that if you're a 16 and 17-year-old Tory member, you're in a case where you could actually potentially vote for the next Prime Minister in a leadership election, but you couldn't vote for your local MP.
Yeah, no. I mean, of course, look, there are anomalies, Jordan, with this all over. My one big principle is you shouldn't be able to vote in an election unless you're eligible to be a candidate. And at national level, I think that applies, and I just don't think that having 16-year-olds standing as members of Parliament makes sense. That's all.
Yeah. Also, where maybe I might go a step further than you, is I'd want presidential elections.
Well, we almost have, Jordan, we almost have them now, because actually, when everyone's voting in a general election, they're either voting for Corbyn or against Corbyn, or for May or against May. We've almost become presidential. And most MPs, the votes they get in their constituencies, they themselves, their personal vote is now absolutely tiny. So you would like a big change towards prime ministerial elections, yeah?
Yes, also, as you mentioned, open primaries, or,
yes,
you know, as a party position, I would like mandatory elections of all MPs.
Do you know what, Jordan? Do you know what? If we had open primaries, then people really would be able, in their own town or district, to get the representative for their party that they wanted. At the moment, the central parties have way too much power. Jordan, you're a true radical, and I thank you for your call. Now, 1 year ago, the world was in shock. It was November the 8th, and Donald Trump had won the US presidential election. He defied the critics and the polls to become the 45th president of the USA. 1 year on, since that election, I want you to tell me, how's he doing? If you think he's saying the right things and behaving as a president should, text me on 84850. Perhaps you think he's a total disaster, in which case you can text to 84850. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. You can watch me on Facebook. It's Sunday morning and we're live from London next.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, it's emerged Downing Street has received a report of inappropriate behaviour about Sir Michael Fallon on the day he resigned as Defence Secretary. Journalist Jane Merricks accused him of trying to kiss her on the lips when she was a junior reporter. The Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, has added her criticism of the former Defence Secretary's to the former Defence Secretary's alleged behaviour.
Completely disgusting, absolutely wrong, and it was right that he has stepped down. He's made his statement about what he believes was the right thing to do, and as a result of that and other disclosed situations, allegations, some of which are turning out to be correct, some of which we don't know, there will be full change at Westminster.
Dan Poulter's become the latest MP to face allegations of inappropriate behaviour towards women. The former minister's been referred to the Conservatives' new disciplinary panel following a report put forward by fellow MP Andrew Bridgen. Theresa May's deputy, Damien Green, has strongly denied claims pornography was found on one of his Commons computers. The allegation in the Sunday Times comes from a former Met Police Assistant Commissioner. Mr Green has called the claim a political smear. Donald Trump's addressed American and Japanese troops in Tokyo as he started his first official tour of Asia, which is likely to be dominated by growing tensions with North Korea. The president has been speaking as he arrived in Japan. Police have arrested a second teenager after an acid attack in Walthamstow in East London on Thursday night, which left a man at risk of losing his sight, the 16-year-old being questioned on suspicion of grievous bodily harm. A man remains in a critical condition in hospital after the attack. The heir to the Saudi Arabian throne has detained 11 princes and 4 sitting government ministers. The anti-corruption arrests reportedly include the billionaire owner of the Savoy Hotel in London. Ian Black, former Middle East editor for The Guardian, has told LBC the motives of the Crown Prince aren't clear.
Is it about consolidating his own power, which he's certainly trying to do, or is it truly about trying to improve economic performance, financial regularity, and so on and so forth? It's certainly very big and justifiably generated headlines overnight, carrying on into today.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia says it's intercepted a ballistic missile fired by rebels in Yemen. State media says it was brought down close to the capital of Riyadh. Gordon Brown's claiming the UK was misled about Saddam Hussein's access to weapons of mass destruction. The former Prime Minister says US intelligence reports cast serious doubt on suggestions the Iraqi dictator had destructive capabilities. He says that information wasn't shared with Britain. LBC weather, mostly dry and bright today, but feeling chilly this afternoon, a high of 9 degrees. Tonight, the temperatures dropping again to a low of 3 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Thomas Watts.
Traffic jam ahead, notifying client of delay.
Cars are getting smarter. But what about managing vehicles for your business? As a global leader for 50 years, LeasePlan knows what's next in smart fleet management. Our 360 formula improves the total cost of running your vehicles whilst looking at sustainability and employee satisfaction.
That's smart. What's next?
Check out our 360 formula at leaseplan.co.uk. LeasePlan. What's next?
LBC Travel, Fulham High Street is closed southbound between Fulham Road and New Kings Road until 6 o'clock this evening because of roadworks. The M4 eastbound going into London is moving slowly from Junction 3 for Hayes to Junction 2 for Brentford. The A1 southbound is looking heavier than usual going past Boreham Wood towards Stirling Corner. In Gants Hill, the A12 Eastern Avenue is slow. That's because of an accident at Aldborough Road. The traffic lights aren't working there either. In Dartford, St Vincent's Road is blocked in both directions because of an accident at Carlisle Road. And on the rails, there's no service on Virgin Trains West Coast between Milton Keynes Central and Watford Junction. That's because of a signalling problem. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
It was November the 8th, 2016. The West in shock from Brexit that had happened a few months before. But no, the establishment felt confident. The one thing that would not happen in 2016 is that Donald J. Trump could possibly win the presidential election. Indeed, the New York Times the day before said it was a 98% probability that Hillary was going to win the election. Well, we watched as the results came in, and as the Midwest in particular, the old Rust Belt sectors, voted for Trump. He won many of those states actually by very, very small margins indeed. He lost California hugely, but he finished up actually with a very comfortable majority on the Electoral College. Let's remind ourselves of the kind of mood and the kind of promises that Trump was making this week a year ago.
As I've said from the beginning, ours was not a campaign, but rather an incredible and great movement made up of millions of hardworking men and women who love their country and want a better, brighter future for themselves and for their family. It's a movement comprised of Americans from all races, religions, backgrounds, and beliefs who want and expect our government to serve the people, and serve the people it will. Working together, we will begin the urgent task of rebuilding our nation and renewing the American dream.
Well, that was Donald Trump a year ago, and of course he'd made a lot of big promises during that campaign, a lot of big changes he said he was going to bring in to the USA, and yeah, you know, I was an accomplice to it. I was a supporter. I spoke on stage with him in Mississippi and went round the spin rooms of the debates that followed thereafter. So, you know, my colours were nailed pretty firmly to the mast. I thought he was infinitely preferable to Hillary, and I felt that not just for America, but for us. So, you know where I stand on this, but a year on, I'm asking you, how's he doing? Is he doing well? Is he doing badly? And you can let us know what you think about the Donald by going and joining our Facebook poll. Go to LBC's Facebook page and give us your opinion by answering the question there. So just go to LBC's Facebook page and you can vote to say whether he's doing well or badly a year on. Now, to help me through this, I've got Professor Ewan Morgan, Professor of US Studies at University College London. Ewan, good morning.
Morning.
Well, he did make a lot of promises, didn't he, in that campaign?
Yes, he overpromised. He made a very famous speech at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania in October 2016, promised to do 10 major things in his first 100 days in office, and he's got a perfect zero for that, but it was almost impossible that he could have carried them off anyway.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of promises made. I mean, clearly his biggest failure, as I see it, is that he's got a majority in the House of Representatives, a majority in the Senate. So it's very unusual, isn't it, to have majorities there and to have a president from the same political party. And really, in terms of legislation, not much has happened, has it?
Well, that's true. Some things have happened. I think we don't quite get the full story in this country. I think Trump's major legislative successes have been relatively small ones, but he has rescinded a lot of what the Obama administration did in terms of executive orders in its last 2 years in office. But it is true that the Republicans are more powerful today than they have been since the 1920s in terms of the breadth of their political control, and one would have expected far more to be achieved. The signature failure is, of course, health care, but it's fairly evident that, in addition, that the promise of tax reform is not going to be met. There will likely be tax cuts, but I don't think there will be tax reforms in terms of sweeping changes in the tax structure.
And that, of course, given that the midterm elections are coming up next year, at the end of next year, that would be quite a blow, wouldn't it, to Trump's presidency?
Well, yes, but we've got to keep in mind that midterm elections are largely fought on local issues and state issues. The Democrats will try to make Trump the subject of the campaign, and he is not an asset to the party, at least at present. He's got the lowest third-quarter approval ratings in Gallup poll history. Poll gave him 33% approval earlier this week. But at the same time, the Democrats are not sitting pretty. They remain a toxic brand for many Americans, and both parties appear to lack popular trust at the moment.
Isn't his major success, and isn't the one thing where he really has had a huge, and it may not just have been him, but the US economy is in pretty amazing shape, isn't it?
Well, the US economy has been growing jobs since the end of the Great Recession in 2010. So he can't claim credit for that. He can at least say he's done no harm. The big thing, of course, is that Wall Street is booming, and that is on the expectation of significant tax cuts and other benefits coming up soon. But the problem is Wall Street booming and Main Street booming are not the same thing. And what Trump supporters will expect him to do is deliver on his promise of better times for ordinary Americans by 2020. And I don't think that his current arguments that he's been stopped from doing things by the political establishment, the fake media, etc., are going to carry him through. He needs to do something.
Yeah, I mean, he will argue, of course, that unemployment is down to 4.1%, which is a 17-year low. He will argue that by killing off the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership and TTIP, that he's helped investment into American companies. I mean, he will claim a lot of the credit, of course, for what's happening in the economy, whether it's true or not. That's, what the incumbent has to live with, good or bad. But the one question I'm really curious to ask you about is everybody saw the Trump victory as America's going to retreat from the world. America's going to put up, the barriers and not interest itself in global affairs. I think in foreign policy terms, he's rather surprised people, hasn't he?
Well, yes, he has. He's re-engaged in the Middle East and Afghanistan in a way that has surprised people. And, of course, I've heard his spokesman claim that that has delivered very significant results in terms of rolling back IS. And it is true that Trump said that he was going to make the defeat of IS one of his major, if not his major, foreign policy goals, and whatever credit he can justifiably claim, he is going to say that that is one of his major achievements. Of course, it leaves the question of the power vacuum that the collapse of IS leaves in the Middle East and how far Iran moves into that, and indeed Russia, but we shall see. That's in the future. The other big question, of course, is North Korea. He's been desperate to get the Chinese leader to cooperate with him in terms of getting the North Koreans to back off on nuclear testing. That shows no signs of succeeding. So Americans will definitely be holding him to account if the North Koreans go on in their current mode.
Yes, I mean, against that, I suppose he has woken the world up, has he not, to what's happening in North Korea and tried to build this big coalition. So overall, Professor Ewan Morgan, in a sentence, Trump, a year on, doing well, doing badly?
Doing badly, but not as badly as many people expected.
OK, thank you very much indeed for that analysis. Well, and on the LBC Facebook page, you're voting, and currently 33% of you say he's doing brilliantly, 67% of you say that he's doing absolutely terribly. And I'm going to ask Charles from Bagshot in Surrey how he thinks the Donald's doing a year on.
Hello, Nigel. Thank you for taking my call. Look, I think the only reason he's doing badly is because I've never seen a president that someone said he has never seen a president as unfairly attacked and unfairly treated by the whole establishment as any other president. Now, that wasn't Piers Morgan that said that. That's not your good self, sir, that said that. That was Jimmy Carter.
Absolutely, Charles. Absolutely, Charles. A remarkable piece in the New Yorker 2 weeks ago with 93-year-old former President of the USA, Jimmy Carter, who, Charles, was very much on the left of politics and so wouldn't agree with Trump on very much at all. But he said he'd never in his life seen a president so unfairly treated by the press.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd like to see him do, which I said to the person who took my call initially, is he was promising to audit the Federal Reserve. That is the centre of the swamp. The Federal Reserve needs to be audited. You think the European Union is corrupt and losing money? They're minor league compared to the Federal Reserve. They lose billions. And where's all the money come? Where's all the money come from? All these disgusting and despicable wars like Iraq, It's all from the Federal Reserve. That needs to be audited. That needs to be reformed. And I think he's being attacked. And people think the midterms are that he's going to get tried. The little story that's happening, which people are ignoring, is in the primaries for the midterms, non-establishment candidates are creaming the establishment candidates.
I know they are, Charles. I was involved in the Alabama upset myself a few weeks ago. No, Charles, you're right. But, no, you've made the point. I think, Charles, the big point you've made there is that perhaps his biggest failure is that he's been unable to drain the swamp in Washington. He's been held back by his own party up on Capitol Hill. He's been held back by the judges, not just in Washington, but around the country. He's having a lot of trouble getting his agenda through. The American establishment, not just the Democrats, but many within the Republican Party, do not wish him well. But he's got some things very right as well. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
The former Chief Whip, now the new Defence Secretary, Gavin Williamson, keeps a tarantula on his desk, and it's called Cronus. Cronus, for those of you who don't have a classics background, Cronus was a Greek god, but Cronus gained power by castrating his father and then retained power by eating his children. And this man's in charge of our nuclear arsenal, is he?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Hampton by Hilton. Book direct for the lowest price.
Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
I like my telly how I like my coffee. Strong, fast, and packing a punch. A bit like Sky One. Because when it comes to telly, I need it instantly. Super fast, straight to the brain. Just like that. Drink one, Sky One.
We've been thinking about dad dancing. How you and he enjoy it in equal measure. He gets to demonstrate his signature moves. You get an evening of free comedy watching him. It works both ways. And then we thought, shouldn't we have the same relationship with our customers, rewarding them for banking with us? And we thought, yes, we should. So we did. That's why with the NatWest Reward current account, we give you 2% back in rewards on household bills. Search NatWest Rewards. NatWest, we are what we do.
£2 monthly fee. Earn rewards on eligible bills paid by direct debit when paying in £1,500 per month. UK only. Eligibility criteria apply.
Block management. 2 very simple words. But what do they actually mean? Well, there's budget approval for starters, then service charge invoices, health and safety paperwork, cleaning, gardening, maintenance, inspections, contracts, insurance, emergency call-outs, and a whole lot more besides.
So for complete block management solutions, just remember 3 simple letters. ABC. ABC Estates will take care of all your day-to-day management, leaving you as happy as Larry. See abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
You know your 70s from your 80s, from your 90s, from your noughties.
Let's go.
But do you know your pension options? PensionWise is a service set up by the government to provide free, impartial guidance about your pension pot. If you're over 50, call 0800 138 1888 to book your free telephone or face-to-face appointment. PensionWise. Get to know your options.
Calling all units. Reports coming in of Sky's gripping new cop drama Tin Star, epic Game of Thrones and loads more shows, all with Sky TV from £20 a month. Sky TV and Sky Q, the next generation box, have been sighted in the vicinity. Witnesses report watching wirelessly all round the home for just £12 extra a month. Units should respond immediately and search Sky Q to join or recontract. Sky. Believe in better.
£20 standard setup, new 18-month TV contract, requires Sky Q multi-screen, Sky Q kit loaned at no cost, upfront payment required, terms apply.
What if you could get that winning feeling every single month? With NS&I's premium bonds, every month you could win tax-free prizes from £25 up to £1 million. And NS&I guarantees that every pound of your savings is 100% secure because we're backed by HM Treasury. Who knew saving could be so exciting? Premium bonds at nsandi.com. Minimum initial investment £100. NS&I. Safer savings set you free.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
We're a year on from McDonald's victory, and my goodness me, weren't the establishment in total horror at the thought that he'd won. But we're a year on, and I'm asking you, is he doing well or is he doing badly? Is he doing brilliantly or terribly? And you can engage with this by going to LBC's Facebook page and you can vote there. Currently, a third of you think he's doing really well and two-thirds of you think he's doing really badly. And we had Professor Ewan Morgan on before the break, and I asked him that question in a very neutral academic, and he said he's not doing very well, but nowhere near as badly as many people thought he would. Good question, Nigel, says Stephen in Walton on the Hill. What has Trump actually achieved? I couldn't say. Well, I will tell you what he would, if he was answering this for himself, he would say that he's done on trade deals what he promised he would do. He's got rid of these big trade deals that the previous administration wanted to enter into. He would tell you that he significantly cut regulations on businesses and particularly on small businesses, and that's being felt throughout the US economy. He would tell you that illegal border crossings, illegal immigration has significantly reduced. Last estimate I saw, it was down 36% estimated over the course of the last year. And I think what he'd say to you is that America's voice in the world is a lot bigger and a lot more significant than it was in the last years of Obama. And I say that because his first speech overseas was in Riyadh, if you remember. There he was with many of the biggest leaders of the Muslim world, saying to them, drive out of your places of worship the bad guys that are making life for all of us dreadful. And on North Korea, what has he tried to do? Well, he's tried to put together a coalition of countries who are prepared to stand up and do something, and not just to allow North Korea to develop full nuclear capability. Perhaps his biggest challenge is China, how he deals with China, what China's relationship with the West is going to be in the years to come. He's currently on a 12-day tour of Asia, where that, of course, will be very near the top. That and North Korea will be at the top of his agenda. Where he's failed is he's failed despite having majorities in both houses on Capitol Hill, he's failed to get major legislation through, and he has right now tax reform, a simplification of taxes, a slight reduction in terms of tax for working Americans, but a massive change in American corporate tax policy. And it's something that if he was to get through, would see hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean hundreds of billions of dollars. Yes, I meant that, because there's something like $2.6 trillion of US company profits sitting in bank accounts all over the world. The reason they don't bring it back is because American corporate tax rates are 35%, which is pretty much the highest in the Western world. If he reduces it and brings hundreds of billions back into America, the revenues that are generated from that will allow him to build some of the infrastructure projects that he promised. But can he get it through? Can he get those houses, despite having a majority there, can he get those houses to approve? And there are times when, you look at the Trump presidency and say, well, is he really a Republican? Or is he, in fact, pretty much an independent? Mike in Ware in Hearts has got a view on this. Mike, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, well, what I would like to say is that I've got family in America, and basically they're from different backgrounds. Some have done well, some not so well, but basically they all voted for Trump because they wanted to vote for change.
Yep.
Now, the reports that I've been getting from them suggest that, by and large, they think he's doing a good job. The problem has been that even in his wildest dreams, he couldn't have got through, or he hasn't been able to get through some of the things that he said he wanted to do, in the run-up to the election. His hands have been tied by legislation and opposition from the other parties and stuff like that. But by and large, they think he's doing well. I saw a program during the week where he'd opened up coal mines that had been closed down in one of the west in one of the mid states, and basically it was a huge success. He'd brought back jobs and employment to the area, and that's what he said he was going to do, and he's done it.
Yeah, he's opened pipelines. Coal mines are opening. He said no to the Paris Accord, and whatever your view on that, again, it was an election promise that he has brought through. And yeah, Mike, in terms of jobs, in terms of job creation in America, yeah, fine. The US economy has been doing well since 2010, but in terms of job creation under his presidency, there's no argument There's no denying it. He's doing remarkably well. But, Mike, you are right when you say that people voted Trump because they wanted change. That is absolutely true. And ultimately, he's going to be judged on how much change he can get through. And there's only so much, Mike, he can do through executive orders. There's only so much that his own presidential powers allow him to do. He, at some point, has to find a working accommodation with Congress.
But can I tell you the other thing that came across from a family? The thing that was echoed by someone you had on earlier about, what Jimmy Carter, the previous,
yes.
One of the presidents, what he'd said about the media attack. It's truly frightening what's been happening in the media in America, according to my family out there, and I've seen the same thing is happening over here. It's truly frightening, the power and the influence that the media have got. If they don't like somebody, and you're a prime example, if they don't like somebody, you're given very little chance to air your views.
Well, do you know, Mike, I had this caller on earlier this week on my show, and it was a caller suggesting that actually it wasn't the Russians that had influenced the elections in America, it was the Jews. The Jews had used their influence in America. And I felt the call itself was actually quite anti-Semitic, quite unpleasant in tone. And I dealt with it by saying, Mike, I said, look, there's no question that the Jewish lobby in America is organised and powerful, but I'm not for one moment do I think they tried to influence the elections. I thought it was ridiculous. And that got interpreted by the pro-Hillary, anti-Trump American publications that I'd said something anti-Semitic and something wicked. So, Mike, if you think the media are vicious here, they've got nothing on the current American media. Mike, I thank you very much indeed for your call. How is Trump getting on with his wall? I'm asked by text. Well, they are making plans. But they've got to get the money, which is why I think getting corporate tax reform through and getting those billions, hundreds of billions, coming back to America is absolutely key. Trump has tried so hard to protect the US, he's the best president since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and that includes Obama, says Chris. I'm a huge fan of Trump. Two things concern me, though. I want him to keep his promises and stop interfering in foreign lands. That farce has gone on for too long, says John. Quite a few of you are saying that actually he's not being very fairly reported. I wonder what Ben in Bristol thinks.
Hi, Nigel.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, when you asked this question at the start of this hour segment, I thought, it's not meant to disrespect, because I thought, ask a silly question, get a silly answer. The answer to this is like, you might as well send out a phone in, what does 2 and 2 equal 4? This guy is doing an amazing job. This is like a whirlwind to behold. I mean, the things you listed. Ben, hang on. It wasn't that silly a question, because actually, on our Facebook poll at the moment, the majority think he's not doing very well. I know, Nigel, you're a smart guy, Nigel. You know the answer. But the people out there don't like to admit the answer because it's kind of trendy. It's kind of cool and trendy and reading The Guardian and looking cool. I live in Bristol, most liberal city in Bristol, in the country. Everyone loves to hate Trump. People love to hate Trump. If you mention that in a conversation, oh, my goodness. But you know what? I'm glad I'm on side. I stick with the winners. I backed him from the start. You just got to take one look at this guy. Even in the early primaries, he's made by God to do this job. He's smart. He's like, have you ever had a problem with your car and there's a mechanic, you've got a mechanic friend comes round, tweaks a few things, he says, no, you've got to sort this, you've got to sort that, you've got to do that. And America is undergoing a reboot. And he's got the brains to do it. And
do you know what, Ben?
And he's got the people around him to do it.
What he's got is instinct. He has the most incredible instinct. As somebody who's a supporter and wishes him well, when I saw him take on the NFL, and these players that for the national anthem were going down on the knee, I thought to myself, what on earth is he doing? Taking on yet another fight. Surely he's got enough on his plate as it is. Here we are 6 weeks in. Big majority of the country agree with him completely. TV ratings for NFL have gone down because too many of these players are taking the knee and not standing for the national anthem. And big advertisers like Papa John's announced in the last few days that they're withdrawing some of their funding. So, Ben, the one thing he's got going for him is the most incredible instinct. There are some that say he should tweet less often. But he would say, Ben, would he not, that he won the election by reaching the American people on Twitter and going round the back of the mainstream media.
They don't like him tweeting because he says things that the media can't refute. And I just kind of, who cares if somebody, a president, tweets slightly crass or silly things? It just shows he's human. He's just a bit of a bolshy character. But people who don't like Trump have usually got issues with people in authority, or they've got some issues with men or something like that, or whatever. He's just a little bit of a bolshy guy. You know, that's you need somebody like that. If Winston Churchill was on Twitter...
Well, his grandson is Nicholas Soames, and goodness me, he says some pretty extraordinary things. Ben, I thank you for your call. Ben, a big fan of the Donald, loves him, thinks he's a star. Maybe you think differently. Let me know if that's your view. If you think he's a disaster, tell me on 0345 60 60 973. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:30 and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
Theresa May's most senior minister has strongly denied claims pornography was found on one of his Commons computers 9 years ago, calling it a political smear. The Home Secretary says the allegations will be looked into. Separately, Downing Street has confirmed Conservative MP Dan Poulter has been referred to his party's new disciplinary committee for an investigation. A second teenager has been arrested over an acid attack in East London, which has left a man in a critical condition. He's being questioned on suspicion of grievous bodily harm after the attack in Walthamstow on Thursday. And President Trump has warned no dictator and no regime should underestimate the United States. He's begun a tour of Asia in Japan, where the response to the North Korea crisis is expected to dominate discussion. LBC weather, dry and bright today, but feeling chilly this afternoon, a high of 9 degrees.
LBC Travel in Gants Hill, the A12 Eastern Avenue eastbound is slow because of an accident at Aldborough Road. The traffic lights aren't working there either. The A1 southbound is looking slow going past Boreham Wood towards Stirling Corner. Fulham High Street is closed southbound between Fulham Road and New Kings Road until 6 o'clock tonight. That's because of roadworks. The M4 eastbound going into London is moving slowly from Junction 3 for Hayes to Junction 2 for Brentford. In Dartford, St Vincent's Road is blocked in both directions because of an accident at Carlisle Road. And on the rails, there's no service on Virgin Trains West Coast between Milton Keynes Central and Watford Junction. That's because of a signalling problem. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
What if you could get that winning feeling every single month? With NS&I's premium bonds, every month you could win tax-free prizes from £25 up to £1 million. And NS&I guarantees that every pound of your savings is 100% secure because we're backed by HM Treasury. Who knew saving could be so exciting? Premium bonds at nsandi.com. Minimum initial investment £100. NS&I. Safer savings set you free.
Even if you only employ one person, you have to provide a workplace pension. It's the law. Get to know your responsibilities with help from the pensions regulator. Visit workplacepensions.gov.uk.
At Argos, get set for 3 for 2 on selected toys. Mix and match your favourite brands with thousands of lines to choose from. Want it today? Get it today with Fast Track Same Day Delivery. Go Argos. Selected lines, conditions apply. Offer ends 7th of November. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m. 90% UK coverage.
Travel Pack. Have the right flight at the right price. In fact, we'll price match most worldwide flights if you find one cheaper elsewhere at the time of booking. So, if you need to book a flight, remember the Travel Pack price match. Call Travel Pack on 0208 903 9999. You won't find a better price for your flight. Travel Pack 0208 903 9999. ATOL protected. Excludes low-cost operators. Competitors must be ATOL licensed. Conditions apply.
A novelty festive jumper. Yawn. Shower gel gift sets. Double yawn. The latest celebrity-endorsed workout DVD. Still yawning. Sipping bubbly at 30,000 feet. Yeah! Going big in LA! Hell yeah! Going even bigger in the Big Apple! Yeah, and triple yeah! This Christmas, get friends and family to chip in towards a Virgin Atlantic flight at whereiwantforchristmas.com. Virgin Atlantic. Let it fly.
If you haven't taxed your car, here's something to think about. At the DVLA, we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. Currently, we are clamping or impounding over 10,000 untaxed vehicles every month. It's nothing personal. It's the law. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/car tax.
So, what's your name and what do you do?
Well, my name's Laura and I'm a hermit crab, saltwater, and I'm single.
Okay, and how did you find your new home?
I sorted it all on Zoopla. I needed somewhere with an easier commute.
Oh, really? Where do you work?
Well, you know that blue wavy thing at the end of the sand?
The sea?
Yeah, that's the one. I only searched for places with less than a 30-minute commute on Zoopla and I found this little baby, but, what are you doing after, this?
Just work.
Start your property search on Zoopla.
Can you think of a reason why you shouldn't apply for an Ocean credit card? There's a credit limit of up to £1,500. They send you texts so you keep control of your spending, and you can see if you'll be accepted before you apply at checkocean.co.uk. Plus, checking won't affect your credit rating. But before you go and check, there's just one reason why you shouldn't. Because you've already got an Ocean credit card, right? Otherwise, get checking. Go to checkocean.co.uk. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One is the exclusive lender.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
A year on, is Trump doing brilliantly or is he doing terribly? And on our Facebook poll, and by going to LBC's Facebook page, you can engage with that if you wish to. 34% say brilliantly, 66% say terribly. And on text I think Trump is no better or worse than previous presidents. The difference has been the media's hostility towards him, sowing seeds of doubt in the minds of many. Well, the media are hostile towards him, but hey, he's pretty hostile towards the media, isn't he? You know, the CNN correspondent tries to ask a question and he sort of shouts fake news at them. And I love the one, because the BBC, the Donald is not a fan, I've got to tell you, of the BBC. And the BBC's correspondent, John Sopel, was there in the White House press room, put his hand up, started to ask a question. The president said to Sopel, "Which news organisation are you from?" Sopel said, "The BBC." He said, "Oh, yeah, another beauty," as if to say you're in the same camp as fake news and everybody else. So it has been the most extraordinary war between the establishment mainstream media and Trump. And his answer to it, in many ways, has been social media, where he goes round the back and he's got something like, I think it's 41 million followers he's got on social media. You may have seen his Twitter went down for 5 minutes the other day. A disgruntled employee who was about to leave Twitter blocked him out for 5 minutes, which some, his critics, said was the most peaceful 5 minutes they've had over the course of the last year, because he is on that machine pretty constantly. My next caller from Liverpool has the name of Portugal. Portugal, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice. Thanks for having me on.
Do you know Portugal? I've never met anybody with that name before. Where does it come from?
It's a nickname given to me by a friend.
Okay, fine.
Because I look. Well, she thinks I look blackish.
Right, and how would that?
Not quite blackish, or light blackish.
Yeah. Right. Portugal. Okay. So, Portugal. How is Trump doing?
I think he's doing great. I think he calls a spade, and I've got a few points of advice for him if you'll pass it on, Nigel.
I'll do my best.
This wall malarkey with Mexico, he doesn't seem to be getting taken serious on it. But Israel, this is a bit wonky. No one mentions the Israeli wall going up that goes around the olive trees in a wonky position, all higgledy-piggledy. So keep it straight. Tell him to keep it straight as possible.
All right.
And also, I think he's doing great on the NHS. Well, his medical things.
Obamacare.
Because, our NHS, there's 181,000 abortions, £600 plus pay at 181,000 plus per year. That is just going to sink the NHS. And 90% of them are paid for by the NHS. So, some things, are your own business.
We're getting a bit confused between things here, aren't we? We're getting a bit confused, Portugal. I'm going to have to move on. I'm sorry. I'm going to go to Will in Evesham. Will, good morning. How's he doing a year on?
Hi, good morning, Nigel. Yeah. Well, I think if we take the kind of media facade aside and just look at the evidence, I mean, so last week the indictment process has started with the special prosecutor, with people clearly linked, the Russian links are just going to carry on, and we'll see where that ends up. The impeachment process is...
There is no impeachment process.
Well, the Democrats are starting, aren't they? Yes.
Well, there is no... As we speak, there is no process.
I mean, his rating's the lowest there's ever been. And on top of that, the guy's a serial liar. I mean, never has it been said before of the President of the United States that when he says something, you can't actually believe what he's saying. And he did it on the first day. On the first day, he lied about the crowd that came to the inauguration ceremony. Why would he do that?
Well, look, I mean, when it comes to people making promises, Will, and keeping them, I mean, I sort of famously remember, read my lips, no new taxes, and that was George Bush Sr., and you could actually accuse all presidents of breaking. Where I will agree with you, Will, is you talked about the special investigation that's going on under Robert Mueller. I think the biggest mistake of the Trump presidency was the sacking of James Comey. I thought it was unnecessary to take on the establishment in this way. This has now led to a special prosecutor who already has gone way outside the bounds, Will, of his inquiry, because what he's supposed to be looking at is, was there collusion in 2016 between the Trump campaign and Russia, not the tax affairs of Mr. Manafort going back to 2006?
But hang on, I mean, again, you're distracting there, I'm afraid. Okay, I mean, yes, the special prosecutor, what he's finding out, George Papadopoulos, which is the real story there, who's pleaded guilty and obviously done some kind of plea. This guy was then dismissed by Trump as some kind of low employee that he didn't even know who he was. And I think almost within the minute there was a photograph published on Twitter of Trump in the meeting with this guy.
Yeah, do you know what, Will? They can publish photographs of senior people who meet thousands. I mean, how many people does Trump sit around a meeting table with in the course of the year? Thousands and thousands of people. Now, it may be significant and it may not. I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know, Will, is that it would appear that Hillary Clinton's campaign have been much closer to the Russians for a longer period of time than the Trump campaign.
Nigel, we're not here to talk about Hillary Clinton, are we? And how many low-level employees? I mean, I would imagine to sit in the meeting with the president, I can't imagine many low-level employees having that kind of honour, because it should be seen as an honour. You're sitting in the room with the president of the United States as a foreign advisor, and you're a low-level employee. It's not credible, is it, Nigel? What
level he was at, I frankly have no idea. But what I do know is this Russia stuff just never seems to go away. It is wildly conspiratorial, and one of the reasons I'm so sceptical about the whole thing is that I've been named as a person of interest, apparently, to the FBI. We even had newspaper articles last week suggesting that I was at the centre of some spider's web of a giant global conspiracy, that I was somehow the bagman running Russian secrets between Assange and Trump. And I know all of that's untrue. Now, if you're trying to put together a story that says there are links, we could do the same in Westminster or in Brussels, for that matter, or in Washington with Saudi Arabia, or with any other country in the world, because there is a constant lobby of countries, of embassies. The question is, Will, do you actually think in your own mind that Russia had a significant effect on what happened in the American elections?
Well, that's why we've got a special prosecutor. It's not what I think. It's where the evidence lies. I mean, the beauty of this is that the kind of half-full and half-full, which is classic Trump about talking about the media this, the media that. We're in court now, Nigel. The court, has integrity. So he can huff and puff all he likes. But if you read the indictment, read George Papadopoulos' indictment, the evidence of collusion is very, very clear, and it is gathering. So you can puff and distract all you like, but I'm afraid the court, it's a slow, grinding process.
Yeah.
But it'll come. And the other thing is...
And he could, of course, if he wants to, sack the special investigator, but I don't think he's going to do that. All of this was caused by the sacking of James Comey. I still think it's the biggest mistake he's made. Will, you had one more point you wanted to make?
Sorry?
You had one more point you wanted to make.
Yeah, well, the final point I was just going to say is, in asking this question, and you standing there as like an honest broker, well, you're not an honest broker in this process, are you? You're not part of the, to describe fake media, you're part of the fake media, because what you spread, you have clearly very close links to Trump yourself, and I think to try and say, well, what do you think, when clearly you have very defined views on
Which is why, Will, if you were listening, at the top of the hour, rather than going into this and giving my opinion, I got an independent academic, Professor Ewan Morgan was on the show from UCL giving his dispassionate assessment a year on of the successes and failures of Trump. So, Will, I haven't pretended on this to be completely neutral as a broker. I'm not. But I am saying, Will, that when it comes to this Russia conspiracy stuff, every time I read something about me being part of the Russian conspiracy, I know it's a load of old codswallop. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:45.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Nawaz.
A revamped curriculum to teach British values is being developed across the country, but it's already been accused of jingoism by a head teacher. Is Britain suffering from an identity crisis?
Majid Nawaz on LBC.
Can you think of a reason why you shouldn't apply for an Ocean credit card? There's a credit limit of up to £1,500. They send you texts so you keep control of your spending, and you can see if you'll be accepted before you apply at checkocean.co.uk. Plus, checking won't affect your credit rating. But before you go and check, there's just one reason why you shouldn't. Because you've already got an Ocean credit card, right? Otherwise, get checking. Go to checkocean.co.uk. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One is the exclusive lender.
This week, the Sunday Times is serving up something really special. Chef Marcus Waring shares his favourite home-cooked recipes. Candice Brown bakes a treat for bonfire night, and find out which new little star of a restaurant A.A. Gill's successor Marina O'Loughlin discovered in Leeds. Pick up your copy of the Sunday Times this weekend.
So go ahead and tell us your name and what you do.
Fergus, I'm a hermit crab, so I walk around, pinch things and move house mainly.
And how often do you move?
I'd say about 15 times a month.
Wow.
Yeah, used to be a pain before I started using Zoopla to sort out the energy, broadband, removals and all that moving stuff. Now it's a lot easier. So this is going on the radio, yeah?
Yeah.
I just want to give a big shout out to all the boys in Rockpool. Go the Rocks!
Start your property move on Zoopla.
Antibiotics, we're wonderful pills, but don't ever think we'll cure all of your ills. So every time you feel a bit under the weather, don't always think that we can make you better. Take us for the wrong thing, that's dangerous to do. When you really need us, we could stop working for you. So please don't end up paying the price. Always take your doctor's advice.
Taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk. Take your doctor or nurse's advice and keep antibiotics working.
Grandad said in his day, London was called the Big Smoke. They worked hard to reduce pollution then. Now we have a chance to do the same. The T-Charge has started. So from now on, many older vehicles driven in the central London congestion charge zone from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. on weekdays are subject to the additional £10 daily T-Charge. This is part of the commitment by the Mayor of London and TfL to help clean up London's dangerously polluted air. Walk, cycle or take public transport where possible. Or pay online. Search T-Charge to find out more. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Do you feel as if you never get enough sleep? Hamsey's Sleep Centres have the answer. Buy a new mattress from our promotional range today and we'll give you up to £100 trade-in on your old one. And up to £200 off your new one, free local delivery, free mattress protector and a free pair of pillows. Plus a full 10-year guarantee. We'll even give you a 100-night sleep trial. Hamsey's, Beckenham, Bexley Heath, Leatherhead, New Malden and Wallington. And at hamseys.co.uk.
We've been thinking about Dad dancing. How you and he enjoy it in equal measure. He gets to demonstrate his signature moves, you get an evening of free comedy watching him. It works both ways. And then we thought, shouldn't we have the same relationship with our customers, rewarding them for banking with us? And we thought, yes, we should. So we did. That's why with the NatWest Reward current account, we give you 2% back in rewards on household bills. Search NatWest Rewards. NatWest, we are what we do.
£2 monthly fee. Earn rewards on eligible bills paid by direct debit when paying in £1,500 per month. UK only. Eligibility criteria apply.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
We're a year on from Donald becoming the 45th US president, or at least winning the election, which happened on the 8th of November last year. I was delighted. I'd supported him in the campaign. I think he's got good instincts on the big stuff. I thought Hillary would have been a disaster. But of course, you ally yourself to someone like Donald Trump. Not everyone loves you for doing it, including Debbie here on Twitter, who says, "You really are a Trump puppet, aren't you? Wanting another ride in his gold lift." It wasn't a gold lift, Debbie. The gold bit was the front door, all right? Just to correct that and to get it right. And yeah, actually, it was pretty remarkable that I was the first foreign person to meet him after he'd won that amazing victory. And what I saw was somebody who'd been actually, in many ways, he was pretty tired. I think the last day of the campaign, he did 5 of his big rallies all across America. He'd been going at it for weeks. He's a man of 71, but he's got the strength of an ox. And what I've seen with him, since that election, is somebody who actually wants to implement his agenda. And you can dislike his agenda, you can disagree with what it is, but he wants to implement that agenda. And time and again, he's being stopped from implementing that agenda by the judiciary and indeed by members of his own party in Congress. But he does want to put into place the things he was elected on. Whether you like him or not, that's what he wants to do. Dawn is calling from Hunsdon. Dawn, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. First-time caller to your show. And
well, welcome.
Wonderful.
Welcome. So how's he doing, Dawn?
Well, unlike the chap in Ware, I think his name was Mike, who phoned in and he said he had family in America.
Yeah.
I, too, have family in America, from Charlottesville.
Right.
And they were, my niece was involved in that terrible riot. She was a nurse. They're all nurses, my sister, my nieces. However, that part is irrelevant. They were upset with him, the way he handled that. But I just think, and they feel, that he doesn't do himself any favours because he's so unpresidential. I think if you're a president, you need to have an aura of respect, and he seems to think he's owed it in some kind of way because he's the president. And just looking at him and the way he struts around and the way he's rude about people, his lewd comments, his rude comments, he just has a way of irritating and antagonising people. And if he was a little bit more presidential, whether you liked Obama or didn't like Obama, he was the epitome of someone who was presidential.
Yeah. Dawn, as a supporter, I have to concede to you in every way that he is unconventional in that presidential role. He has a completely different approach to it. It's certainly, having done business for many, many years in America before I got involved in politics, I did often notice that it was New Yorkers who had a particular directness and style and brashness about them, and I saw more of it in New York than I saw in any other part of America. So I do understand the comment, Dawn, that they don't see him as being presidential because it's not what they used to. I tell you what I would say, Dawn, and I wonder what you think about this, that's how he is in America. That's how he is in the White House. That's how he is in the Trump Tower. But when he turns up in Riyadh or in Warsaw or in Paris at these big overseas state occasions, that actually, I think he's surprised people how presidential he's been when he's been outside of America.
Well, not from what I saw when he's pushing people out of the way to get to the front of the photo call.
Yeah, but that's him, yeah.
I just think if he would do better with his own party and getting everything through in Congress, if he just came across as somebody that would listen to people, that's part of being a president. If it's not my way, it's the highway. And I'm going to sack you all. If you don't agree with me, well, you can get out. And that's exactly what he's done. He's trying to get himself surrounded by yes people that will agree with him to just feather their own nest.
Well, he's certainly Dawn there's certainly been quite a turnover of people around him, certainly inside the West Wing and there in the White House. Dawn, I completely understand the points that you're making. But all I would say is this: he's a 71-year-old self-made billionaire. He ain't going to change. That's just the way he is. And Dawn, as far as Charlottesville was concerned, what was it that upset them about the president's response?
Sorry?
What was it about Charlottesville that upset your relations?
It was just the way he handled the riots, and he didn't come out and condemn both sides. He didn't. He should have made him go to Charlottesville and seen the people in Charlottesville. And he just didn't handle it at all well.
No, he was in trouble because he condemned he said there was fault on both sides, and everybody thought he should have actually focused more on the extreme right, who had led to that demonstration in the first place. And whilst the extreme right in America do deserve condemnation, this group that call themselves Antifa, they, believe you me, are not angels by any stretch of the imagination, and we've seen a lot of violent, unpleasant protests that they've been a part of. So Dawn, listen, you make your points very, very well. And Dawn really saying that Donald Trump is not everyone's cup of tea. He acts in a way that we've never seen before in America, or anywhere, frankly, on the Western stage in terms of a big leader, but that is the way that he is, and he ain't going to change in a hurry. Theo says, I firmly believe that POTUS, in the end, will manage to implement his agenda, despite the massive resistance he is getting. Well, Theo, he may, but he needs to get tax reform, or most of that tax reform, through. It has to go through Congress, and if he doesn't get it through by November next year, even though the midterm elections in states are often, as the professor said earlier, determined by a lot of local issues, national issues matter too. And I do think that's the one thing he simply has got to get through Congress. Musa is calling me from Ealing. Good morning.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, Nigel. Obviously, I don't have much time to comment, but it's just complete lies you're saying on radio. Self-made millionaire.
No. I said billionaire.
He wasn't no self-made. He got a small loan from his father. Had he put that loan in the bank, he would have more money than he has today. He has
No, Musa. He got a few million from his father, which is telephone numbers to most of us. Which is telephone numbers to most of us. But I did say he was a self-made billionaire. Apparently, he's worth $7 billion. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, my point is this, Nigel. I'll tell you why I agree with you, then I'll tell you why I disagree with you.
All right, go on then. The floor is yours.
He's better than Hillary any day of the week. That's a guarantee.
Right.
Hillary had a different agenda that wasn't good for either Europe or America at that. But with regards to the issue of Donald Trump, okay, let's look at his plan. His plan was to drain the swamp. He put 15 of the top Wall Street executives in his cabinet. He said that he was going to replace Obamacare. Mm-hmm. We saw what he brought to the American people. Well, 14% of the American people chose it. Well, 40% of the American people thought it was acceptable. He thought about, let's bring the taxes down for everybody. If you look at his tax plan, that's their own congressional budget that looks at his own tax plan, saying that most of Americans won't get the tax plan. They're saying the richest 1% is going to get most of the tax cuts. So tell me,
which is not true. Which actually is not true, Musa. The biggest tax cuts are coming for US corporations, and the point of that is to keep the money inside the country. But look, we're running out of time. A year on, Musa, has he succeeded or has he failed?
They just plummeting him. They're just hitting him like. He wants to succeed, but they're not going to allow him to succeed.
You may be right, Musa. It's the last comment I can make on this call. Our Facebook poll, 34% of you say he's doing brilliantly, 66% say he's doing terribly. That Facebook poll will remain open. It'll be open until mid-morning tomorrow. Well, look, it's a year on. He's got one big thing going for him, and that is the US economy. As Clinton once said, it's the economy, stupid. It makes, in the end, a very big difference. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 3 o'clock this afternoon, it's Alex Salmond. But up next, It's Majid Nawaz.
Did I just hear Nigel quote Clinton?
I did. I did.
Approvingly as well.
Well, he was right, though. Economics does matter.
Well, we'll tell him that. You said he was right. Coming up, a male model said today that photographs that have been touched up to make models look perfect in advertisement should be marked as edited. We're being sold fake images of the ideal body. How is this affecting our mental and physical health? Before that, children across the country are being taught in classes with more than 100 pupils amid a growing crisis over school funding. How can anyone teach class sizes that large? But first, a revamped curriculum that includes British values is being developed for schools across the country, but it's already been accused of jingoism by a head teacher. Is Britain suffering from an identity crisis?
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 12 o'clock. 3 Conservative MPs have been referred to the party's new disciplinary committee over claims of inappropriate behaviour. Dan Poulter, Stephen Crabb and Daniel Kaczynski are all facing allegations. Meanwhile, it's emerged Downing Street received a report of inappropriate behaviour about Sir Michael Fallon on the day he resigned as Defence Secretary. Journalist Jane Merricks accused him of trying to kiss her when she was a junior reporter. As allegations continue to swirl about a number of MPs, Home Secretary Amber Rudd says things need to change.
Parliament hasn't had those proper procedures in place yet. It needs to. Those are the changes we're making. Not before time. I agree with that. It feels like Parliament has been slow to put that in place. That's why it's so important that we do it.
Separately, one of Theresa May's closest allies is strongly denying claims police found pornography on his office computer 9 years ago. First Secretary of State Damien Green says an ex-Met Police chief's allegations